Everyone, James here with Zombies Are Cool Painting. Today I'm going to be teaching you a effect or technique which I call painting with pigments using a subtractive technique. Now basically it's a pretty cool technique. It's a quick and easy way of getting really nice looking effects on your tabletop quality minis. You can see like here the metallics look very nice. This bone-filled base from Secret Weapon Miniatures, again really nice effects, and it literally only took a few seconds to do. So I hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. Basically, the principle is, what I'll do is I've started off by base coating the area I'm going to be shading and highlighting. In this case, I'm using one of the fantastic Secret Weapon bone-filled bases as a demonstration piece. I'll also do a demonstration on a model later, and I'm going to be using a couple of colours of pigment. I'm going to be using some dark earth pigments and some exhaust black pigments from Secret Weapon Miniatures, and I'm going to be using these in various mixes to paint onto the base. Now my thinning medium that I'm going to be using is just water, and I've got my palette here. As you can see, it's a bit messy, but that doesn't really matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a brush that is completely dry, just a synthetic brush here we're going to be using, and what we'll do is we'll open up our dark earth pigments, just like that, there we go, and then we're just going to get some of those onto the palette, just like that. Want a decent amount. There we go. Because we do want to cover the entire base with these. Alright, that'll do for the dark earth pigments. Then we're going to grab just a bit of standard water. I've got some in a dropper bottle, which is just convenient for doing this. So we'll stick a drop of water in our pigments there, and we'll mix that up. And you need to use water. Don't use any sort of pigment medium or matte medium or anything, because what that will do is it will set the pigments in place. What you need is a method of applying the pigments which will result in them being flexible and being able to be moved around later. So we've created basically like a paint sort of mix there, and we're just going to go ahead and apply that to the model. And I can see right off the bat that's way too thin, so maybe it's alright actually. Yeah, that'll do. On second thoughts, in hindsight, that's perfect. But basically, you just want to be able to apply this like a paint, really. And this, like I said, maybe it's a tiny bit too thin. I'm going to layer this up so it doesn't really matter though, which is why I'm not going to go back and change the consistency of the pigment-water ratio. And don't be afraid to heat this on, really. Yeah, just nothing too special here. Make sure you're getting it into all of the crevices, because if you don't, it's not going to work out so well. Perfect, this is looking good. Forcing that in there. Alrighty, so that's our first layer of pigments onto the base. I'll just rinse out the brush in my water, nice and easy, just like that. And yeah, that's good. So what we're going to do is we'll just wait for this layer to dry. So that's the result we're getting so far. As you can see, it's already looking really nice, very dirty and mucky. What we're just going to do now is we're getting some of the exhaust black pigments from Secret Weapon. We're grabbing a very nice dry brush and we're just going to stipple this into some of the deeper areas, some of the more recessed parts where I want it to look even darker. So just in here, in there, and just we're going to stipple this out nicely so it'll look a bit smoother. There we go. It's just going on some of the lower areas, and this is going to darken those areas down and draw more attention to these more raised areas up here, which is what we're going for. It'll make it look a lot nicer. Perfect. Just stipple a bit around there. That's exactly what we're going for. So close up our pigments just like that. I'll rinse out the brush just quickly. Very easy stuff here, really not hard at all. And I'll just give this a blow just to remove any excess pigments. And now comes the fun bit, which is what gives this the name, the subtractive or reductive method, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, I'm just going to take my finger and I'm just going to rub over the areas on the base, and essentially, just like dry brushing, this is just going to remove the pigment, from the raised areas, similar to dry brushing where you're instead applying paint to the raised areas, and this is going to give us our highlighting effect. So I'm just getting my finger in here and easily just picking out the areas where we want attention to be drawn. So you can really see how in a few seconds how simply I've done this, but that just looks fantastic. Like, you'd never be able to get this effect doing like dry brushing, because dry brushing is going to, get a lot more paint onto the surrounding details. Here you've got really fantastic contrast in just a few simple steps, and it would take ages to do this using a brush or other methods. Now I'm just taking this makeup applicator, or a cotton wool bud would work as well, just to get into some of the more difficult to reach areas, just to remove a bit more of that pigment, just like that. Really easy stuff, but it looks fantastic. It really does. And there you have it, in literally a few minutes. Beautiful looking bone base with lots of contrast, going from really almost a black all the way up to a nice brown, up to a nice light bone there. Really, really beautiful effects in a really short amount of time, which is why I really like using this technique. Now, a quick tip I'm going to give you is on some of these areas I might want to brighten it up even further, and doing that's really simple. All you need to do is take your brush, moisten it in some water, and then just dab on these particular areas that you want higher contrast, and this will just remove even more of the pigment. So you can see areas like here on the skull, we want it brighter. Some details on there, on that part of the bone, same here, and just that's going to clean up some of these areas, but the overall, what you're trying to get with this technique is just really, really nice looking dusty, dirty effects, which is what we've got here. So there you go, a really nice, quick and easy way of painting up one of these bone-filled bases. Alright, so I'm just going to do a demonstration of this effect on this orc now, and I'm just going to be demonstrating on the metallic areas on the front of the orc. So I'm going to start by just base coating this area with some pig iron. As you can see, I'm just using the paint straight out of the pot, just gooping it on. It really doesn't matter because this is just a demonstration piece. What we'll do next is we'll use black pigments on the armour, on the metallic areas. So we'll grab Exhaust Black, made by Secret Weapon. Again, I really highly recommend the Secret Weapon pigments. They're pretty good value for money, and they're really fantastic pigments. Yeah, anyway, grab some of the Exhaust Black just with our brush, dip the brush in, and stick the black pigments on the palettes, just like that. Can't get much simpler than this, really. And we'll just apply a small drop of water. Perfect. And mix that with the pigments to get a paint sort of effect. There we go. And I'll turn the model over and apply this to the silver areas, or the areas I've painted in silver anyway. And you can see this is really thick, and you know, this is ideal for painting troop models, but what I'll do for more high-level models, which I'm trying to paint, is I'll apply a wash of pigments, and that will give a much more subtle kind of effect, but it'll end up looking a little better. So anyway, we've got the black and the brown on there. I'll close up the pigment jar and rinse out the brush. Another quick tip, remember to save these pigments on the palette, because you can revive these with more water and use them again, so don't throw away your palette, keep it there. Personally, I would recommend actually using a single palette for all your pigments, so then you can just go back to the sections, and you can get those really nice palettes, artist palettes with the dips in them for really cheap, just a plastic one, and they're fantastic for working with pigments. So I highly recommend doing that. I just left mine indoors away from my filming area, which is why I'm not using that at the moment. Anyway, we've rinsed out our brush, and what we're going to do now is we're just going to wait for these pigments to dry, and I'll be back when that's done. Alright, so our pigments are now dry, and I'm now going to go back and remove some of the pigments to show our highlights through. So I'm going to use just my standard finger, as well as just one of these makeup applicators. You could also use a cotton wool bud or something like that. Basically anything that's practical for removing the pigments. You could use a stiff brush also. So just with our finger, look at that instant contrast. We're just going to wipe over this area to show through the base colour, which was of course the silver. Just wiping away there. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a nice big stiff synthetic brush. Yes, I know, wacky colours, and I'm going to just brush over the area to remove some more of that pigment. Very quick, very effective. So we've done enough of that, I think. Now come back in with the finger, and remove some more. There we go. Remember, you know, the more you remove, the more you run your finger over it, the brighter the metallics are going to be. So, you know, it's kind of important that you remove a reasonable amount on the highlight areas, because it will draw attention to them, of course. And there you go. You can really see how nice that looks. You know, you've got that really nice smooth shading, and you know, that's something you just don't get with dry brushing, or you don't get as easily. So I really think this is a fantastic technique because it gets really nice looking results in a short amount of time on your tabletop models. Now, a question that's often raised when you're using this kind of technique is, how do you finish off these bases, or not bases, off these pigmented areas, because you've got loose pigments. Obviously you can't game with these because the pigments are going to wear off over time. So what you need to do is you need to varnish it, and you've got to use a specific technique when doing that. You've just got to dust the varnish on. So if you're using a can, just lightly, spray over the area, just a light dusting, just enough to set those pigments in place. Personally, I prefer doing this with an airbrush because you can use a lower pressure than you would with a can. Turn the PSI down a bit on your air compressor and then just lightly dust over these areas in a couple of coats. Do a very light first coat and a slightly heavier second coat, and this will mean that the pigments kind of set in place in the first coat and they're then firmly stuck down after the second coat. So that's how you finished them off, and they're the end results. Very nice, quick and easy technique, but gets some really neat effects. You can experiment with different colours, doing rust effects and things like that. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in a later video.